This program, of course, is presented by Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the most widely read, widely sold, and respected wrestling magazine in the world today.
Welcome to the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Podcast, Episode 7. I am PWI senior writer Al Castle, joined as always by fellow senior writer Dan Murphy. How are you?
I'm doing well. That's me.
And today we've got somebody else. We've got a contributing writer, Louie Dee, who does a lot for the magazines, has been there for many, many years. A fellow Yankees fan, so I like him already. How are you, Lou?
Hey, I'll take it.
Lou, why don't you tell everybody a bit about how long you've been writing for PWI, some of what you take care of for the magazine, that kind of thing?
Well, let's see. I've been part of PWI for almost 7 years now, the middle of 2008. I was a contributing writer the whole time, so I've done a lot from prospecting Jack Swagger, then Jake Hager in FCW as the next big thing, and a future world champion, which at least was a prediction that came true.
Technically,
all
yes.
the way up to the On the Farm column in the Inside Wrestling, the Wrestler magazine before that went away. And now I'm the resident NXT guru. All the rankings you see in the magazines and online, that's my territory. I am the NXT guy, if you will.
Yep, and obviously this is a big week for NXT, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later. And also, what we hope to do this week is have a discussion about the match of the year, kind of looking back at the PWI match of the year, and a real special treat. We've got an interview with Mr. Match of the Year. You may know him as Mr. WrestleMania, Shawn Michaels, who I spoke to last week. He's got a new book that he's promoting. We talked a bit about his amazing run with matches of the year. But for now, we do want to tell you about the current issue of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I finally got my physical copy in my hand. I assume you guys do too?
We do. Yep,
yeah.
I do.
And
I do too.
Yep, it's a big one. It's the year-end awards issue, the year in wrestling, and we cover the match of the year and all the other awards. You definitely want to pick this up. The best way to do that is to go to pwi-online.com. You could buy that issue, and while you're there, subscribe so you don't miss an issue. You could get 6 issues for just under $21. That's just $3.50 an issue, half off the cover price. You get a deeper discount if you subscribe for 12 issues for $39. You know, if you had the digital version, you would have been reading it several weeks ago, before me even. And you could get 6 issues of the digital version for $14.99. That's $2.50 an issue. Huge discount over the cover price. I can't say enough good things about the digital version. I mean, I know you guys have checked it out. Looks great on a laptop, looks great on a tablet, your phone. In all these cases, it saves you the trouble of trying to find one at a newsstand, which I know has become a harder and harder thing to do these days. We always hear from people on Twitter. It's probably one of the top things we get is, where do I find this thing? When is it out? It's not like it was 20, 30 years ago where you could find a PWI anywhere. So, but the magazine is as good as it ever was. So, again, the best way to do it is just go ahead and subscribe. It comes to your mailbox, or download it right to your laptop or tablet. Was there a time that you paid for PWI?
There was a time that I paid for PWI, and it was called pretty much my entire childhood and teen years.
Yeah.
It was the gold standard of wrestling magazines for pretty much our entire lives. I know you guys are around the same age as I, but I started reading it in '86, '87 when I first kind of started getting into WWF at the time, and then onto other promotions, and here we are nearly 30 years later and still going.
Yeah, it was really. I was about the same time frame, Louie, and I think that that's what it was such a really interesting time, because fans of that age were introduced to wrestling in large part through WrestleMania and Hulkamania, and it was the magazines that really kind of introduced those fans like me and possibly you're the Northeast guy, who may know the WWF, but then you read the magazine and you discover Jim Crockett Promotions, you discover Texas and Memphis and all the different territories that were out there. So it's really kind of interesting how at that era, when everybody was getting into wrestling, the magazine was such a vital bridge to introduce them to the rest of the business.
true. I used to, my parents, we would buy soda and water and things, like all families, and my mom would let me keep the bottle return money, which some of the people listening to this podcast may not know what a bottle return is, depending on where in the country they're from. But, my mom used to let me keep the bottle return money, and that's how I would buy PWI and the wrestler at Inside Wrestling at my grocery store when I was 9, 10 years old.
Yeah, I hoarded my my lunch money during high school to buy PWI at the end of the week. And at, what is it again? $2.50 an issue for the digital version. It's about the same price as it was then. So definitely a great value. You want to definitely pick it up. Anyway, guys, we're talking on Tuesday morning. Raw was last night. I thought we'd briefly cover the events of Monday Night Raw, but it wasn't terribly eventful, right? I mean, it sounds like feels like they're kind of moving into a status quo. Dan, last time we talked, we weren't exactly sure what direction they were coming off the Rumble. Now there's a little more clear direction with Fastlane set up. Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan with the winner getting Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. Dan, do you think that they've already made the call to go with Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania?
I think that they're just booking on the fly at this point. I think that they made a decision going into the Rumble, and they were backing Roman Reigns, and then they got cold feet, and now they're giving themselves some wiggle room. And I don't think they've made a decision yet. I think it's going to change 3, 4, 5 times between now and WrestleMania. And that's on one hand, it's being responsive to your fan base. On the other hand, it's creating some kind of sloppy booking, because they're kind of seemingly booking on the fly like they did last year. But the thing is, if they're listening to the fan base so much now, they should have been paying more attention to the fan base previously, because I think that they booked themselves into a corner and they're trying to get out of it with the Royal Rumble. Whereas if they paid attention leading into the Royal Rumble, the signs were very much there that Roman Reigns is still a little bit green, not quite ready for a Mania main event, in my opinion, whereas Daniel Bryan has been the fan favorite. And for some reason, they tuned that out leading up to the Royal Rumble, and now they're kind of scrambling. So I don't think that they've locked in, but they've given themselves at least a little bit more wiggle room heading into the big show.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like they're really trying to kind of ride this one out. They're hoping the cheers get a little bit louder for Roman Reigns, that fans come around, and again, maybe we'll kind of push it to the absolute 11th hour before making the call, if they have to make that call, that Roman Reigns isn't ready and to stick Daniel Bryan in that slot. But it really is such a kind of a silly problem that they have, because the whole idea, the whole Roman Reigns experiment is about creating a star that the fans love, the next John Cena, somebody they really gravitate to. And it sounds like they have it. I mean, it's in Daniel Bryan, but so why are they making things so difficult for themselves? It's such a blessing that this guy a year ago was so red hot and then ends up taking off 9 months. I mean, you couldn't be cooled down more than he was cooled down. And for him to come back and for the fans totally be in love with him, they should just embrace it.
The key, real quickly, is what you just said in there was the next John Cena. And I think that's the mistake. John Cena is a polarizing character. He's a character that a lot of the fan base has not liked for the past 10 years. And they are trying to refashion Roman Reigns, who was this kind of silent but dangerous, mysterious guy from The Shield. And all of a sudden he's cracking jokes and doing the facial expressions. And he's just corny He's just corny now. He's lost it. They've overgroomed him in that attempt to make him the next John Cena, and that's what's really hurting him.
Yeah, I thought last night maybe in that opening promo they listened to fans a little bit. I get the sense he was given a little more rope, that he wasn't as tightly scripted, and for better or for worse, that felt more like whoever the real Roman Reigns is. And again, we talked about it. He stumbled a little bit. Maybe he wasn't totally sure of himself. But he needs that kind of experience. He needs that kind of practice. But again, that was the worst reaction he's gotten since the Rumble. Last couple of weeks on SmackDown and on Raw, fans were, they were cheering him. But last night it seemed to take a turn for the worse. Louie, what's your thought? Do you go with Reigns? Do you go with Bryan? You put off Reigns another year or two?
Well, I think what's going on right now shows off a twofold problem with what's happening in WWE. The first is that, the fans, you can't let the fans dictate business 100% in any walk of life. But clearly Daniel Bryan, like you said, is the fan favorite. He's the guy everyone wants to see. He got his WrestleMania moments last year with his 2 wins. And then he never really had a chance to fail or succeed on his own. He got into the feud with Kane and then was injured and missed the rest of the year. And now he's back, and the fans want him back where he was. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. We have to move on and create new stars in the interim, but now Daniel Bryan's back, and the fans want him back, and it's what do we do? The other issue is, you talked about the next John Cena, and as Dan said, he's a polarizing character. He's one of a kind. He's this generation's The Rock, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair in that regard in terms of star power. But John Cena didn't become John Cena overnight. The John Cena we got to know and love eventually became that John Cena on a whim, on a Halloween episode of SmackDown, dressed up as Vanilla Ice, doing some battle raps in the locker room. And it was a year and a half before he was the WWE champion. He got over a little bit, the fans started to like him, won the U.S. title for Big Show at WrestleMania 20, and then a year later got his big moment at WrestleMania against JBL.
Yeah. I mean, when you look back at all the top guys in WWE in the past, nobody ever reached that level with this kind of push. And the guys who have had this kind of push have almost, without exception, flopped. I mean, you look at Lex Luger, Bobby Lashley, those guys who were anointed and weren't the choice of fans, none of them ever achieved that top level.
Right, and you look at, one name you didn't mention there, but I'll mention now is The Rock. I mean, The Rock was the third-generation blue chipper. He won the Intercontinental Championship almost right away, and the fans just got sick of him to the point where The Rock got a little bit more of an edge to him and joined the Nation of Domination, and then his career took off, a year and a half later. With Roman Reigns, for those who are in that boat of kind of being a little smarter to things, it feels like, he was in the Shield. A year ago at WrestleMania, they fought a 6-man tag against Kane and the New Age Outlaws, which, as much of a showcase as it was for them, it was really a 6-man tag in the middle of a WrestleMania card that was kind of forgotten about after a while. Here we are less than a year later, and now all of a sudden Reigns, after the breakup of the Shield, he kind of became the guy, and then he missed a few months with the hernia. But he seems like he was just shoehorned right back into that spot where
he won the Slammy for being Superstar of the Year, Louie.
Right. Despite missing 3 months with an injury. I mean, that's impressive for a guy to have been mainly a tag team wrestler for the first half of the year, then missed 3 more months with an injury, and he's the Superstar of the Year. It's kind of impressive, to be honest.
Yeah.
Next time anyone gives us any heat about the PWI 500, we ought to throw that back at them.
I have to say, Dan, I loved what you wrote about the PWI 500, about pick your favorite 50 actors and then go on and on and on and see how hard that gets, because I know a lot of people might give us grief for that, but nobody except for us 3 and the rest of the staff know how hard and how much work goes into that.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. And the interesting thing you said there too, and I wrote that in the column about picking the, ranking actors and looking at community theater versus, top draws versus what the Academy picks and everything. But what you said there, it was interesting, Louie, was your favorite. And it's not even really your favorite, but what you consider to be the best of the year, because favorite could take in a different direction. But again, it just shows the complexity with what the 500 is. We can create the 500 and we may not even agree with it, but those are the guys that we've come to a consensus we believe have had the best year.
Right. And obviously the other side of the 500 is the year-end awards, where fans do get the sound off and pick their favorite. Wrestler of the year this year was Brock Lesnar, a controversial choice. But what I want to talk about now was the match of the year, both this year's match of the year, the 2014 match of the year, and also look back on some matches of the year with maybe a focus again on the guy who really is almost synonymous with match of the year, Shawn Michaels. There have been 44 matches of the year in PWI's history, and I think before PWI, we would actually do the awards back in the Wrestler magazine. And it's a lot of fun going back over them and seeing what passed as a great match of the year, years ago. The first match of the year, 1972, was a Battle Royal won by Bruno Sammartino. And you go over the years, you even have stuff like Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan with, that was just, I think, the anniversary last week. I know you wrote about it, Dan, with the Twin Hebners. That, I believe, was match of the year. So there have been 44 matches of the year. Fully a quarter of those, 11, involved Shawn Michaels, which is just a crazy, crazy statistic. The next closest, Ric Flair and Bruno Sammartino both have 5 matches of the year, less than half of what Shawn has. Shawn won in every year from 1993 to 1996, and every year from 2004 to 2010, which was, that's pretty much his WWE career.
And in 2004 to 2010, you're looking at, at that point, people are thinking his career was over.
Yeah.
That back injury that he was supposed to never recover from, and then he goes from that incredible winning, that match of the year streak. Yeah.
And he won matches of the year with opponents that included Marty Jannetty, Razor Ramon, Diesel, Bret Hart, Chris Benoit, and Triple H, Kurt Angle, Vince McMahon, of all people, John Cena, and that was not their WrestleMania match. That was their Raw match a week later. Ric Flair, and then back to back with The Undertaker. Only other match that repeated that way, one in consecutive years, was Edge and Christian versus the Hardys versus the Dudleys in 2000 and 2001. What's interesting is a lot of Shawn's best matches didn't win match of the year. And that speaks to, whatever the competition was there. But I think there were some better matches than the ones that he won for. Triple H at SummerSlam 2002 here at the Nassau Coliseum, his comeback match, the first Hell in a Cell with The Undertaker, his WrestleMania 19 match with Chris Jericho. All of those didn't win. But just a crazy, crazy run. Do you think anybody duplicates that?
I don't think it'll ever be duplicated. Most of those matches, I think, were great matches of the year. There's some real classics in there, but again, there were also a few duds that really, his match of the year against Jannetty, for example, was really kind of, there wasn't a lot going on in 1993, to be honest. It was kind of, your top runner-up that year was the Steiner Brothers versus the Heavenly Bodies. That's really those are the matches of the year. Wow. So there were some duds in there. Obviously, the McMahon match was kind of interesting just because it was Vince McMahon and it turned into a bloodfest and everything else. But I think Michaels' record, as impressive it is, it's a little bit bloated with some matches that maybe shouldn't have made it, but I think they made it more on reputation and hype than anything else. But that being said, no, I can't imagine anyone else coming anywhere near that number of matches of the year. Number one, staying on top long enough to get the time for, to have a 15, 20-minute match and a prominent show enough to get that much of the vote. I just don't see that happening, or someone staying that healthy and able to do it. So I think it's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing that we saw with HBK.
And I brought this up to him in our interview, and I remember writing about it that year also as my year-end memory. I think Shawn Michaels deserves a 12th match of the year for his performance at WrestleMania 28 in the Hell in a Cell with Undertaker and Triple H. He was, I think, every bit as important in making that match great, and that's one of the great WrestleMania matches I've ever seen. And a lot of it had to do with the emotion and the drama and the performance that he contributed to that match. So, again, maybe an asterisk, he deserves a 12th award. Lou, looking back on all those matches,